Maybe you think I'm crazy, and that's fine. But I have always been a Tolkien nerd. I love his books. I have read The Hobbit. I have read Lord of the Rings multiple times. I've done it by audiobook. I love it. I have read the Silmarillion. Still get confused about every other turn because it's a very confusing book, but I have read it. I can claim that. Now I just watch clips on YouTube to explain to me what I didn't understand. But I love Tolkien. And anybody who tries to accuse me of not loving Tolkien is going to have a problem because they're not right. So I decided that I wanted to see the Rings of Power show that has come on Amazon Prime. And people have said that it is a terrible show and that it is nothing but race baiting and it's so woke and it's terrible and we just can't stand it. And while they have already slated 50 episodes to be made, or 50 hours of episodes to be made over multiple seasons, 8 episodes in this season, only 3 have aired so far. So there's plenty of time for them to screw it up. I will grant you that there's plenty of time for them to screw it up. But I haven't seen that yet. And some people would say, well, you're not paying attention. This is terrible. It's awful. He's totally against Tolkien. And just wait. The first episode, and I will try not to give you spoilers, but just understand it's been out for 2 weeks now. Go watch it. It's really good. But I will do my best not to spoil it. But what we find in the first episode is what has been coined a girl boss Galadriel. And what that means is that it's a derogatory term referring to a woman who basically shows up every man in the scene somehow, right? That the men there are just absolutely inadequate and stupid and can't do anything. And I will say that there is a scene that comes close to that and might cross into that territory. But so far I've only seen it as one scene and not the whole show. And like I said, you could argue that it wasn't that. You can argue that it was. It's kind of ambiguous in that way. So it depends on which way you want to look at it. If you want to like it, there's plenty to like in this story. If you don't want to like it, there's plenty you can find not to like it. What I will say is just cinematically, just cinematography of it is the coloring of the images, the CGI, the practical effects that we loved of Lord of the Rings is all here. It's all in this. It's just updated with new tech to make it happen. But when you see orcs, they don't look like the terrifyingly awful versions that are in The Hobbit. They look like the uniquely terrifying, disgusting characters that were done in The Lord of the Rings, the original trilogy, because those evoked so much imagination and thought and grandeur. That's what they came back to do. That's what they attempted this time. Many people are back from the original Lord of the Rings. Some of the characters are back and playing different roles that they're under so much makeup you can't tell. There is, in fact, an orc that actually is played by, I wish I could remember his name, but I can't, who actually played most of the most famous orcs out of Lord of the Rings and ended up playing Nori in The Hobbit, one of the dwarves. Great actor, has done a great job, and I have loved seeing what he's done in this so far. Again, there's only 3 episodes, so there's plenty of things that they can screw up. There's plenty of things they can make right. But so far, they have stuck reasonably close to the book. People have said that that's not the case. There is one concern that I have, and that it's in the time that this story takes place, it's in the second age of the Lord of the Rings. Now, quick recap. They try to cover a lot of it in the opening story. That seemed to me is that the opening monologue or prologue is probably the weak point for me. but it's because you're comparing it to probably the master class of opening prologues from the Fellowship of the Ring, just one of the best opening prologues ever. And then you come to this one, so your hopes are set really, really high, and suddenly, something doesn't make up for it, doesn't reach that. This one's okay, it's good. Don't get me wrong, it's not like it's terrible, but it's not that masterclass in amazing prologue openings, right? What I am concerned about is that during this time period in the story, Galadriel, who seems to be the main character we're following right now, who's a incredibly powerful and wise uh, elf, and she is married at this point to Celeborn. A lot of the names are very similar, and so I might get them mixed up. I believe it's Celeborn who she's married to by this point in the story. We haven't met him yet, and she doesn't act like she's married to him yet. And that's concerning to me because I don't want her to fall in love with somebody and have this romantic tryst over here that's just not canon. It's just not a part of her character, right? Now, granted, she's like 6,000 years old, even at this point. I get it. I understand that there's a lot of growth and change you can have in that. In fact, that's one of the things I do like about it is that in this story, she's not the calm, collected, poised, wise, silent leader that she is in the Third Age, where the Lord of the Rings story takes place. In fact, she is impetuous and filled with rage and anger and vengeance, and that she is single minded in that to her detriment. I get that maybe she grew in that from here to there. I can see that happening. That's totally fine. What I'm afraid of is though is that they're going to cause her to leave her character as who she actually is in the arc that she was already written for her. Because Tolkien has already said that she was a mighty warrior and that she had great abilities to lead both militarily and as a civilian, not necessarily in the military, but to lead the government, to lead the people, to lead the elves. She was a great leader. That's all in the story, and it's all understood from Tolkien. And yet, people are furious that that's what she's doing here, and I don't see the problem. Now, people are very upset because let's understand. Let's get the let's understood. This story was written as a mythology for Northern European countries, specifically for Great Britain and the British Isles, because they didn't have a mythology. The Greeks have a mythology, Egyptians have a mythology, the Romans have a mythology, but Northern Europe doesn't really have that. You can go into the Norse mythology, but Western Northern Europe, France, Spain, Germany, England, that area doesn't really have one. And he wanted to give them one. And that's what he wrote The Lord of the Rings for. But that means that the characters in it look like the characters that would have believed in this mythology, right? That's what they would have thought of. That's what they would have seen. That means they're primarily white. That's Northern Europe, right? That's the people who have lived in Northern Europe for millennia. So I understand why people think that that's what the character should look like. I get that. But I also understand if you'll write me a good character, I don't care what they look like. That's my thought. And there is a character, Arindir, I believe is his name. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing it. He is a made up character for the story, so he's not a part of the original Silmarillion or any of the history of Lord of the Rings. He's an original character made up for this. He is black. He has short curly hair. He looks like no elf we have seen in these stories ever before during in any part of the Lord of the Rings story so far. But I will tell you this. I think he's my favorite character so far. And he is absolutely the most elf-like character there is. He just is. He's one of my favorite characters. He does a great job. Great actor, great skills. I'm loving it. But what about the uh, black dwarf woman? And I literally, it doesn't bother me. I was concerned that it would. I will admit that I was concerned that they were going to make it into a race baiting thing. But in the story so far, again, they have plenty of time to mess this up. But so far, again, a great character. Love her to death. Can't wait to see more of her in the story. I have no problem with what I have seen so far. And anybody who says otherwise, I think, is not giving it a fair shake. And I'm not saying that everybody's going to like it, right? Not everybody likes these movies. Not everybody likes Lord of the Rings in general. One of my friends says that it's horribly overrated, and I think he is entirely and utterly stupid. But, that's his choice. He can believe that, he can think that all he wants. But I love the fact that we get to go back to Middle Earth and we get to see the history that I've read about and tried my best to keep track of in my head. But let's quickly go over the history of Lord of the Rings, right? So you understand where this story lies. So, in the beginning, there is the one god of Middle Earth, of Arda, which is the whole world's name. His name is Eru Iluvatar. He is a single god, right? He creates a higher choir and lower choir, or higher set of gods and lower set of gods. Valar and the Maiar. They're together called the Ainur, and through their singing, they create the world, and through Iluvatar's vision of what he wants it to be. But one of them, Melkor, decides to sing terribly and puts into the world, into the world, anger and hatred and revenge and discordant notes. And each time Iluvatar changes the tune, Melkor comes back with his own, trying to change it again. And before it's all done, Iluvatar simply says to him, "Everything you have done is already a part of my plan. You cannot harm my plan," because he's all powerful. This infuriates Melkor, and he goes off to cause problems later on. Then Iluvatar shows them the world. They see it, they love it, and they enter into it and begin to prepare everything for the arrival of Iluvatar's children. That's what they're called. That is the elves and men. During this time, they grow all of these plants, and the lights the light that they have to light up this world is two lampstands. Melkor can't stand these things and finally arrives and destroys them. Before the lamps completely go out, they are then created into two trees doing the same thing. Again, this infuriates him. But during this point, the elves have awoken in Middle Earth and are drawn to Valinor, where the Valar and the Maiar are. That's where they will spend their time. This is where the story opens, in this time period where the elves are in Valinor. This is a part of the prologue of the story. We see the two trees. They're gorgeous. They're amazing. And they quickly fast forward and through the fact that Melkor, Morgoth is will be his new name after this, but Melkor comes in with a giant spider named Ungoliant, who kills and poisons the tree. Before the last seed and the last fruit fail, they take them and create the sun and the moon out of them that circle Arda in the sky. This infuriates Melkor again because he can't get rid of them now. Why they didn't do this first, I don't know. But anyway, all of that happens. Melkor flees to Middle Earth and begins to build up his forces. The elves leave Valinor, the Undying Lands, and head east to Middle Earth to make a life there and to basically fight with Melkor to make a beautiful time in Middle Earth. Well, this goes on for millennia. This is in the first age at this point. And the first age ends whenever the elves beg for help from the Valar, who then come and help to destroy Melkor and his forces, which takes over a century to do. That's how powerful he was. He is destroyed, he is imprisoned, but not before his second in command gets away, Sauron. This story will follow that. It will look into the second age, the second age begins when Melkor is defeated. The second age will end It begins when Melkor is defeated. It will end when Sauron is defeated the first time. Then we will move to the Third Age, which will end when you and the Lord of the Rings, the books and the store and the movies cover the ending of the Third Age into the Fourth Age. That's what will happen there. So you're pretty well caught up on the basic infrastructure of what's taking place in this story, well enough that you can go and watch it and enjoy it. Here's the thing: if you don't know anything about Lord of the Rings, you can find this story enjoyable. If you know a lot about Lord of the Rings, you can still find this story enjoyable. If you want to be mad about it, you can do that too. It's completely up to you and how you approach this. It's your choice. So you make it. But I'm going to tell you that so far, I would give it a 5 out of 5. Definitely would recommend you should go and watch it and enjoy it, because I have and I will continue to. If they change it, if they mess it up, again, they have plenty of time to do so. If they mess it up, I will come back and I will let you know, and I will no longer watch any further. But it hasn't happened yet, and I'm hoping and praying that it doesn't happen.